The moment the UES Retribution appeared in front of the Velithian fleet, every alien communication channel went silent. For the first time in their long history of conquest, the consortium forces faced something they had never encountered, a species that had prepared for war. Ambassador Thexandra stared at the human battleship in disbelief. The vessel was enormous, scarred, and bristling with weapons that her sensors couldn't identify. It had appeared without any warning, using technology that shouldn't exist. "This is impossible," she said to her bridge crew. "Our intelligence reports showed that humans barely possess faster-than-light capability. How did they build something like this?" Her tactical officer was already running scans on the human ship. "Ambassador, I'm detecting energy signatures we've never seen before. Their power output is higher than our entire fleet combined." Captain Oh Kyung-hyun's voice filled the communication channels again. "You have 15 seconds remaining to comply with our demands." Thexandra tried to regain her composure. The consortium had never been threatened by a primitive species before. Surely this was some kind of deception. "Human vessel," she transmitted. "You are outnumbered 15-1. Your single ship cannot hope to defeat our entire fleet." The response came not in words, but in action. The Retribution's targeting systems locked onto every alien vessel simultaneously. Warning lights began flashing on Velithian bridges as their sensors detected weapon systems far more powerful than anything in their databases. "Time's up," Captain O announced. Weapons Officer Shin Aryam fired a single demonstration shot from the ship's smallest weapon. The energy beam struck an unmanned probe near the alien fleet and completely vaporized it in a flash of light that could be seen from Earth. The display of power sent shockwaves through the consortium forces. The probe had been protected by the same energy shields that protected their main vessels. The human weapon had gone through it like it wasn't even there. "Impossible," whispered the Velithian tactical officer. "Our shields should have absorbed that energy completely, but the humans weren't finished." Communications Officer Jung Min-soo activated the ship's quantum transmission system, broadcasting on frequencies that reached across the galaxy. The message was simple and clear. Someone was finally fighting back against the consortium. On dozens of enslaved worlds, the oppressed species heard the transmission. For the first time in generations, they had hope. A young species called humanity had appeared to challenge their oppressors. The effect was immediate. Rebellion broke out on 7 different worlds within the first hour. Species that had been enslaved for centuries suddenly remembered what freedom meant. The consortium's perfect order began to crumble. Ambassador Thexandra received urgent messages from across the galaxy. "Ambassador, we have uprisings on Corvani Prime, 3 mining colonies in the Zareth system, and the processing stations around Veltar. The enslaved populations are demanding freedom." She couldn't believe what was happening. One primitive species with 1 crude warship was inspiring revolution across the entire galaxy. "This ends now," she declared. "All ships target the human vessel. Maximum firepower." The Velithian fleet opened fire with every weapon they possessed. Energy beams, plasma bolts, and gravity missiles converged on the Retribution from all directions. The combined firepower was enough to destroy a small moon. The weapons struck the human ship's shields in a spectacular display of light and energy. For a moment, the Retribution was completely hidden by the alien attack. The Velithians watched their displays, certain that no vessel could survive such concentrated firepower. But when the energy dissipated, the human battleship was still there. Its shields had absorbed the entire attack without even flickering. The scarred hull was completely undamaged. "Report," Captain O called to his crew. "Shields at 98%, replied his tactical officer. "Minor fluctuations in the quantum matrix, but all systems are nominal." The alien attack had been the equivalent of throwing rocks at a mountain. The Retribution had been built to withstand weapons far more powerful than anything the consortium possessed. "Now it's our turn," Captain O said calmly. The human battleship's real weapons came online. The planetary conclusion device began charging, creating gravitational distortions that the alien sensors couldn't understand. The species equalizer prepared to fire streams of exotic matter that would ignore every defense the aliens possessed. But Captain O was still hoping for surrender. He didn't want to commit genocide, even against an enemy that had planned the same for humanity. "Last chance," he transmitted to the alien fleet. "Surrender now or face the consequences." Ambassador Thexandra was trapped between pride and terror. The consortium had never surrendered to anyone. But she was beginning to understand that humanity was unlike any species they had encountered before. "Who are you?" she transmitted desperately. "How did your primitive species develop such power?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Captain Yoon Daiho and tech specialist Han Yoonji, who had been held prisoner aboard the flagship, managed to escape during the confusion. They had disabled their guards and taken control of the ship's communication system. "We're humans," Captain Yoon's voice rang out across all channels. "We're the species that has spent 10,000 years learning how to kill anything that threatens us. We're the apex predators of this galaxy, and you just made the mistake of threatening our home." The words carried across space to every ship in both fleets. For the first time, the galaxy heard humanity's true voice. Not the diplomatic politeness of first contact, but the primal roar of a species that refused to be prey. Several Velithian ships began breaking formation. Their crews had never faced genuine resistance before. The idea of fighting an enemy that might actually win was completely foreign to them. But Ambassador Thexandra wasn't ready to give up. She had built her career on the successful integration of primitive species. She couldn't accept defeat from creatures she had considered barely sentient. "All ships ramming speed," she ordered. "If we can't destroy them with weapons, we'll crush them with mass." The desperate order backfired spectacularly. The moment the alien ships began their attack run, the retribution demonstrated why it was humanity's ultimate weapon. The final argument fired once, sending a kinetic projectile moving at near light speed directly into the lead Velithian vessel. The impact was devastating. The alien ship simply ceased to exist, torn apart at the molecular level by forces it had never been designed to withstand. The explosion sent shock waves through the rest of the fleet, damaging several other vessels. That was enough. The remaining Velithian ships stopped their attack and began broadcasting surrender signals. They had never seen destruction on such a scale before. Their beautiful, elegant vessels were helpless against human brutality. "We yield," Thexandra transmitted, her voice broken. "We surrender to the human forces." Captain O accepted the surrender, but the damage was already done. Across the galaxy, the news of humanity's victory spread like wildfire. The species that had seemed so primitive had defeated the consortium's finest fleet with a single ship. The revolution that followed was swift and brutal. Enslaved species rose up on every world the consortium controlled. The aliens who had conquered the galaxy through deception and overwhelming technology found themselves facing enemies who had learned humanity's most important lesson, sometimes the only response to tyranny is overwhelming force. Within days, the Velithian consortium collapsed completely. Ambassador Thexandra found herself negotiating not from a position of strength, but as a representative of a broken empire begging for mercy. The nanobots were neutralized. The enslaved species were freed. The prisoners were returned to Earth. And humanity took its place in the galaxy not as junior members of someone else's civilization, but as the liberators who had reminded the stars what freedom meant. Grand Admiral Song Heron addressed the United Nations one final time. "Today we learned that in a galaxy full of advanced civilizations, there was still room for one more. One that fights not because we want to, but because we refuse to kneel." The UES Retribution returned to Earth as humanity's ambassador to the galaxy. Its scarred hull and deadly weapons served as a permanent reminder to any species that might threaten human freedom. Some civilizations were too stubborn to be conquered. The galactic visitors had indeed gone silent when humanity's battleship appeared. And in that silence, the galaxy learned a new truth. Advanced technology was no match for the determination of a species that had never learned how to surrender. Earth stood free, and the stars belonged to all species once again. The UES Retribution moved through space like a ghost. Its stealth systems bent light and gravity around its massive hull, making it invisible to the alien sensors. Captain Oh Kyung-hyun stood on the bridge watching the Velithian fleet grow larger on his screens. He had trained for this moment for 15 years. Every day had been spent preparing for combat against an unknown enemy with superior technology. Now that enemy had a name and a face, and he was about to discover if human determination could overcome alien advancement. "Stealth systems operating at maximum efficiency," reported Navigator Im Jong-hwan. "The alien fleet shows no signs of detecting our approach." The Retribution was everything the Velithians were not. Where their ships were elegant and graceful, the human battleship was brutal and functional. Its hull was covered with weapon emplacements, sensor arrays, and armor plating that had been scarred by decades of weapons testing. The ship looked like what it was: a weapon designed by a species that had spent its entire history learning how to kill efficiently. Every system was built for war. Every corridor was designed like a fortress. Even the crew quarters were armored bunkers that could withstand direct enemy fire. Captain O walked through the ship as they approached their target. His 8,000 crew members were at their stations ready for combat. These men and women had volunteered for a mission they might not survive, knowing they were humanity's last hope. "Captain, we're receiving the final targeting data," called Weapons Officer Shin Ariam from her station. "All primary systems are charged and ready." The Retribution's weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human engineers had looked at the problem of alien superiority and solved it with typical human logic. If the enemy was more advanced, hit them with something so overwhelmingly powerful that advancement wouldn't matter. The ship's main weapon was called the Planetary Conclusion Device. It used controlled black holes to create gravitational distortions that could tear apart matter at the molecular level. The species equalizer fired streams of exotic particles that ignored energy shields and conventional armor. The final argument was simply a massive kinetic weapon that could punch through a planet's core. "The aliens are maintaining their standard formation," reported Lieutenant Colonel Ryu Soman from Tactical. "They're not expecting any threat. Their shields are at minimum power. Their weapons are in standby mode." The Velithian fleet hung in space like a collection of crystal sculptures, beautiful, serene, and completely unprepared for what was approaching them through the darkness. Their confidence in their own superiority had made them careless. Navigator Im Jonghwan guided the Retribution through a complex series of micro-jumps, using gravitational anomalies and space debris to mask their approach. The ship's quantum drives could manipulate space-time itself, allowing it to move in ways that conventional physics said were impossible. "We're picking up increased alien communications," reported Communications Officer Young Minsu. "They're preparing to broadcast their ultimatum to Earth." Captain O nodded grimly. The timing was perfect. The aliens were about to reveal their true intentions to the world, just as humanity's response arrived at their doorstep. On the bridge's main screen, Earth was visible as a small blue dot in the distance. Captain O had been born on that world, had left it as a young officer to serve aboard humanity's greatest secret. He wondered if he would ever see it again. "All stations report ready," announced his executive officer. "The ship is at full combat readiness." The Retribution had been designed to fight outnumbered and win. Its armor could withstand hits from weapons that could destroy cities. Its shields used rotating quantum frequencies that made them nearly impossible to penetrate. Its engines could push the massive ship to speeds that should have torn it apart. But its most important feature was its crew. These were humans who had been selected for their ability to think under pressure, to adapt to changing situations, and to never give up no matter how bad things looked. "Signal from Earth Command," Young Minsu reported. "The nanobots have been neutralized. All civilian populations are safe from alien biological weapons." That was one less thing to worry about. The aliens' plan to use Earth's water supply against its people had failed. Humanity had quietly countered their biological warfare before the Velithians even knew they were in a fight. "Distance to target fleet?" Captain O asked. 30,000 kilometers and closing," Navigator M replied. "We'll be in optimal firing position in 3 minutes." The alien fleet was massive. 15 ships, each one larger than anything humanity had built publicly. Their crystalline hulls gleamed with inner light, and their energy signatures were unlike anything in human databases. But the Retribution had been built specifically to fight enemies like these. Its weapons had been tested against computer models of advanced alien technology. Its armor had been designed to withstand energy weapons far more powerful than anything humans possessed publicly. "Captain, I'm detecting movement in the alien fleet," Lieutenant Colonel Ryu reported. "They're beginning to transmit to Earth." On the communication channels, Ambassador Thexandra's voice could be heard speaking to Earth's leaders. The friendly musical tone was gone. Now her voice was cold and commanding. "People of Earth," the alien was saying, "your trial period has ended. You have provided us with sufficient intelligence about your species and your world. It is time to begin the integration process." Captain O felt his jaw clench. Integration. The alien's euphemism for genocide. Your governments have been very cooperative, Thexandra continued. They have given us detailed information about your military capabilities, your population centers, and your resource distribution. This will make the integration much more efficient. The alien ambassador began explaining the new reality. Earth would become a resource extraction site for the Velithian consortium. The human population would be reduced to a manageable workforce. Those selected for survival would serve as laborers in the mining operations that would strip Earth of its valuable minerals. Resistance is not an option, she announced. We have introduced nanobotic control systems into your water supply. Any attempt at organized opposition will result in immediate pacification of your population. But as the alien spoke, she had no idea that death was approaching through the void. The Retribution had closed to optimal firing range, its weapons locked onto every ship in the Velithian fleet. All weapons systems show green, Shinarium reported. Targeting solutions confirmed for all enemy vessels. Captain O took a deep breath. This was the moment that would decide humanity's future. If the Retribution succeeded, Earth would survive as a free world. If it failed, humanity would join the dozens of species that had already been integrated by the consortium. Drop stealth systems, he ordered. All hands prepare for combat. The Retribution appeared in space like a nightmare made real. 3 kilometers of scarred metal and deadly weapons, materializing directly in front of the alien fleet. The ship's appearance was so sudden and shocking that the Velithian communications cut off in mid-sentence. For a moment, there was complete silence across all communication channels. The beautiful alien ships hung motionless in space, as if their crews couldn't believe what they were seeing. Then, from the human battleship, came a transmission that would echo across the galaxy. Captain O's voice was calm and measured, but it carried the authority of a species that had never learned to kneel. This is Captain Oh Kyung-hyun of the Earth battleship UES Retribution. You have threatened our world and our people. You have exactly 30 seconds to release your prisoners and begin withdrawing from our system, or we will demonstrate why humans are this galaxy's apex predators. The silence that followed was deafening. In their crystal ships, the Velithians stared at the human vessel with something they had never experienced before. Fear. They were looking at a warship built by a species that had been preparing for this fight for over a century. Ambassador Thexandra was the first to respond, her voice no longer confident and superior. Impossible, she whispered. Your species lacks the technology for such a vessel. Captain O's response was simple and terrifying. You're about to learn just how wrong you are about humanity. The Retribution's weapons began to charge, filling space with energy signatures that the aliens had never encountered before. Humanity's first contact was about to become humanity's declaration of independence. The galaxy was about to discover that some species were too stubborn to be conquered. Grand Admiral Song Heron had been waiting for this moment her entire career. For 30 years, she had overseen humanity's most classified military project. A project so secret that only 12 people on Earth knew it existed. When Commander Lee Hoon's emergency message reached her through coded channels, she knew the time had come. The Omega Protocol was about to be activated for the first time in human history. She called an emergency meeting in a bunker. Buried deep beneath the Swiss Alps, the facility was shielded from all known forms of detection. No alien scanning technology could penetrate its defenses. The world leaders who attended were shocked. Presidents, prime ministers, and military commanders who thought they knew all of humanity's secrets discovered they had been kept in the dark about the most important project in human history. Ladies and gentlemen, Admiral Song began, I'm about to tell you about a program that has been running since 2287, 100 years of preparation for exactly this scenario. She activated a holographic display that showed a massive construction facility hidden in the shadow of Jupiter's moons. The images were incredible. Automated factories the size of cities, mining operations that had been harvesting asteroids for decades, and at the center of it all, something that took everyone's breath away. A warship unlike anything humanity had ever built publicly. It was enormous, bristling with weapons powered by technologies that shouldn't have existed. The ship was scarred and battle-tested as if it had already seen combat. This is the UES Retribution, Admiral Song announced. Humanity's first and only battleship. The room erupted in questions. How had such a massive project been kept secret? Where had the technology come from? Why hadn't the legitimate governments been informed? Chief Engineer Lim Woojin stepped forward to explain. He was an old man now, but his eyes still burned with the passion of someone who had dedicated his life to a single goal. We began this project after humanity's first radio transmissions left Earth, he said. Some scientists realized we might not be alone in the universe, and if other species existed, they might not be friendly. The engineer explained how a small group of visionaries had established the Omega Protocol, using black budget funds from dozens of countries. They had built the hidden facilities and begun developing weapons that violated every treaty on Earth. We studied every war in human history, Lim continued. We looked at what made humans successful in combat. And we realized our greatest advantage wasn't technology. It was our willingness to use overwhelming force. Dr. Kang Minji, the project's head scientist, took over the presentation. She showed images of weapons that made nuclear bombs look like firecrackers, reactors that controlled miniature black holes, armor that could withstand direct hits from planet-killing weapons. The retribution was designed on a simple principle, she explained. If we ever encountered hostile aliens, we needed to hit them so hard and so fast that they would never recover. The ship's specifications were staggering. It was 3 kilometers long and packed with enough firepower to destroy an entire fleet. Its engines could push it to speeds that should have torn it apart. Its weapons could strike targets across solar system distances. How is this possible? Asked the president of the European Union. Our public technology can barely reach Mars. Public technology, Admiral Song emphasized. We've been developing military applications in secret for a century. The retribution uses controlled black holes for power, quantum tunneling for faster-than-light communication, and weapons that can bend space-time itself. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. The ship was already crewed and ready for combat. Volunteers from every branch of Earth's military had been secretly recruited and trained for decades. Fleet Admiral Choi Tae-young had been the Retribution's commander for 15 years. He had never seen Earth since taking the position. His crew of 8,000 men and women had sacrificed everything for humanity's defense. We've been waiting in the outer system, he reported through secure communications. Running combat drills, testing weapons, preparing for this exact scenario. The world leaders were stunned. They had been negotiating with aliens while humanity's most powerful weapon waited in the shadows ready to strike. Why weren't we told? Demanded the Secretary General of the United Nations. Because politicians negotiate, Admiral Song replied bluntly, and negotiation requires trust. We needed a weapon that the aliens couldn't know about, couldn't plan for, couldn't counter. Lieutenant Colonel Ryu Somin, the Retribution's tactical officer, began explaining their battle plan. The ship would emerge from stealth directly in front of the alien fleet. Its first strike would be designed to disable rather than destroy, giving the aliens a chance to surrender. If they refuse, she said coldly, we have authorization to use weapons that will eliminate their entire fleet within minutes. The plan was brutal in its simplicity. Appear without warning, demonstrate overwhelming force and demand immediate surrender. If the aliens refused, destroy them completely before they could retaliate or call for reinforcements. What about the nanobots in our water supply? Asked the President of North America. Dr. Kang smiled grimly. We've been filtering our water through quantum purifiers for the past month. The nanobots are already being neutralized. By the time the aliens try to activate them, they'll be harmless. But the most important part of the presentation was still to come. Navigator. Im Jong-won explained how the Retribution would approach the alien fleet using stealth technology that bent light and gravity around the ship. They won't see us coming, he said. Their sensors are designed to detect conventional spacecraft. They've never encountered a ship that uses controlled gravitational anomalies for propulsion. Weapons Officer Shin Aram displayed the ship's armament. The names alone were terrifying. The planetary conclusion device, the species equalizer, the final argument. Weapons designed by a species that had spent its entire history perfecting the art of warfare. Each weapon system was tested against computer models of alien technology, she explained. We've run millions of combat simulations. The aliens' energy shields and armor are designed to stop conventional weapons. They can't handle the kind of force we're prepared to use. Communications Officer Young Min-soo revealed another crucial element of the plan. The Retribution carried quantum communication systems that could reach across the galaxy instantly. They had already detected signals from other enslaved species, waiting for someone to stand up to the consortium. The moment we engage the aliens, we'll broadcast our attack across the galaxy, he said. Every species under consortium control will know that someone is finally fighting back. As the presentation concluded, the world leaders faced the hardest decision in human history. They could continue trying to negotiate with the aliens, hoping to find a peaceful solution. Or they could authorize the use of humanity's ultimate weapon. The aliens plan to exterminate 90% of our species, Admiral Song reminded them. They've done it to dozens of worlds before. Negotiation is no longer an option. The vote was unanimous. The Retribution was authorized to engage the alien fleet with maximum force. Humanity's first contact would become humanity's first interstellar war. But as the orders were transmitted to the hidden battleship, everyone in the bunker knew they were crossing a line from which there was no return. If the Retribution failed, Earth would be defenseless. If it succeeded, humanity would announce its presence to the galaxy as a species willing to fight for its survival. Captain Oh Kyung-hyun received the authorization codes aboard the Retribution. His ship had been humanity's greatest secret for decades. Now it would become humanity's declaration of independence from alien dominance. All stations, prepare for combat operations, he announced over the ship's communication system. Today we find out if 100 years of preparation was enough. The Retribution began its approach toward the alien fleet. Its stealth systems activated, its weapons charging, its crew ready for the battle that would decide humanity's fate. In their crystalline ships, the Velithians continued their preparations for Earth's integration. They had no idea that death was approaching them through the darkness of space, carried by a species that had never learned how to surrender. Captain Yoon Dae-ho had spent 15 years in black operations. He knew how to get into places where he wasn't wanted and how to get out alive. When Admiral Cho Min-ho gave him the mission to infiltrate a Velithian ship, he knew it was the most dangerous assignment of his career. "We need proof," Admiral Cho had told him during their secret meeting. "Dr. Park's translations aren't enough. We need hard evidence that the world leaders can't ignore." Tech specialist Han Eun-ji was the best hacker in Earth's military. She could break into any computer system humans had ever built. But alien technology was different. It would take all her skills to get past their security systems. "Their ships use quantum encryption," she explained to Captain Yoon as they prepared for the mission. "But every system has weaknesses. We just need to find them." They used a small stealth shuttle to approach the alien flagship. The Velithians were confident in their superiority. They weren't expecting humans to attempt an infiltration. Their ships had basic security, but nothing designed to stop a determined human operative. Captain Yoon had studied the ship's structure for weeks. He knew exactly where to enter and which corridors to avoid. Tech specialist Han had prepared devices that could tap into the alien computer systems without being detected. The infiltration went smoothly at first. They entered through a maintenance port and made their way to the ship's data center. The corridors were empty. The aliens seemed to need very little crew to operate their massive vessels. Han's equipment worked better than expected. The alien computers were advanced, but they followed logical patterns. Within hours, she had accessed their main database. "Captain, you need to see this," she whispered as data scrolled across her portable screen. What they found was worse than Dr. Park's worst fears. The Velithians had detailed plans for Earth's conquest, maps showing where they would build processing centers for the human population. Designs for biological weapons tailored specifically to human genetics. Schedules for strip mining Earth's resources after the inhabitants were eliminated. But most horrifying were the records of previous integrations. The database contained files on dozens of other species. The pattern was always the same. The Velithians would arrive peacefully, offer friendship and technology, gather intelligence, and then systematically exterminate the native population. "Look at this," Han said, pointing to a file labeled Integration History Species 847. "They did this to a race called the Corvani just 5 years ago. 40 billion people reduced to a workforce of 4 million slaves." Captain Yoon recorded everything while Han copied the files. They had proof now, evidence that no government could ignore. But as they prepared to leave, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. "We've been detected," Han said, her fingers flying over her equipment. "They've found our access point." Velithian security forces surrounded them before they could reach their shuttle. The aliens moved with fluid grace, carrying weapons that hummed with energy. Captain Yoon reached for his sidearm, but the aliens were faster. "How interesting," said a familiar voice. Ambassador Thexandra entered the room, studying the two humans with curiosity. "We wondered when some of your species might attempt something like this." They were taken to a holding cell deep inside the ship. The walls seemed to be made of the same crystalline material as the ship's hull. There was no visible door, no obvious way to escape. "Your species continues to surprise us," Ambassador Thexandra said as she visited them in their cell. "Most races never suspect our true intentions until it's too late." Captain Yoon refused to show fear. "Our government will demand our release." "Your government believes we are their benevolent allies," the ambassador replied with what might have been amusement. "They won't even know you're missing until it's far too late." Over the following hours, Thexandra explained the full scope of the Velithian plan. The nanobots they had introduced into Earth's water supply were nearly ready for activation. Once triggered, they would affect human brain chemistry, making resistance impossible. "Your species will simply lose the will to fight," she explained. "You'll become docile and cooperative. It's much more efficient than warfare." "Why?" Han asked. "Why do this to innocent people?" "Innocent?" Thexandra seemed genuinely confused by the question. "Your species has spent its entire history in warfare. You've never known true peace. We're offering you the ultimate peace, the peace of non-existence." The ambassador continued her explanation with the casual tone of someone discussing the weather. The consortium had been expanding across the galaxy for millennia. They consumed entire worlds, taking what they needed and eliminating what they didn't. "Your planet has remarkable mineral deposits," she said, "and your species shows interesting creative capabilities that make you suitable for certain types of labor. We calculate that 400 million humans should be sufficient for our mining operations." "That's less than 10% of our population," Captain Yoon said. "Exactly. The rest are unnecessary. Their elimination will free up resources and reduce complexity in the integration process." Thexandra explained that the consortium had perfected this process. They had integrated over 200 species, each time following the same pattern: peaceful contact, technology sharing, intelligence gathering, and then systematic extermination. "You see, most intelligent species develop along similar paths," she said. "They become peaceful, cooperative, trusting. It makes the integration process very simple." "But humans are different?" Han asked. "Oh yes," the ambassador replied. "Your species is fascinatingly violent and suspicious. You've maintained your aggressive instincts even while developing advanced technology. It's quite unusual." She paused, seeming to consider something. "In fact, your species is the first to attempt active resistance during the intelligence gathering phase. Most races never suspect anything until we activate the nanobots." Captain Yoon felt a spark of hope. If humans were different, maybe they had a chance. "So you're worried about human resistance?" Thexandra made a sound that might have been laughter. "Worried? About a primitive species with crude chemical rockets and nuclear weapons? Your most advanced warships are barely capable of reaching your own moon." But even as she spoke, Captain Yoon noticed something in her voice. A slight uncertainty that hadn't been there before. The Velithians were supremely confident in their technology, but they had never faced a species like humanity. "Your violent history is certainly impressive for a young species," the ambassador continued, "but violence without technology is meaningless. You lack the tools to threaten us." Meanwhile, back on Earth, Commander Lee Hoon had received the data packet that Captain Yoon had transmitted just before being captured. The information was fragmentary and incomplete, but it was enough to confirm Dr. Park's worst fears. He tried to contact Admiral Cho, but found that the Admiral's communications were being monitored. He tried reaching other military leaders but received the same result. The Velithians had infiltrated Earth's communication systems more thoroughly than anyone had imagined. But Commander Lee Hoon had one advantage. His monitoring station was considered unimportant by both human authorities and alien observers. No one paid much attention to a facility that watched for asteroids and space junk. He began sending coded messages to personnel he trusted, using old communication protocols that predated the alien arrival. Slowly, carefully, he began building a network of humans who knew the truth. The message was simple. The aliens were not friends. They were predators who had come to harvest Earth's population. Humanity's first contact was actually a carefully planned genocide, but even as the truth began to spread among a few trusted individuals, time was running short. The nanobots were nearly ready for activation. The Velithian fleet had completed its intelligence gathering. The integration process was entering its final phase. In her cell aboard the alien flagship, tech specialist Han managed to send one final transmission using equipment hidden in her clothing. The message was brief and coded, but it reached Commander Li Hun's monitoring station. Nanobots and water supply, the message read. Activation in 72 hours. God help us all. Earth had less than 3 days before the aliens would turn humanity's own water supply into a weapon against them. 3 days to find a way to resist the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. Ambassador Thexandra was confident in her victory. She had conquered dozens of worlds using the same tactics. She had never encountered a species capable of mounting effective resistance. But she had made one critical error. She had underestimated humanity's greatest strength, their refusal to surrender even when facing impossible odds. 3 months had passed since the aliens arrived. Dr. Park Ji-soo spent her days working on translation software, trying to understand every detail of the Velithian language. She had always been good with languages, but this was the hardest challenge of her career. The Velithians spoke in beautiful, flowing sentences when humans were around, but sometimes when they thought no humans were listening, she caught fragments of different conversations. These conversations used words she didn't recognize, spoken in harsher tones. "There's something wrong," she told her assistant one morning. "The language they use in private meetings is different from what they use with us." Her assistant, a young man named Kevin, shook his head. "Maybe it's just formal versus casual speech. Humans do that too." But Dr. Park wasn't convinced. She had recorded dozens of hours of Velithian conversations. The more she studied them, the more concerned she became. There were words that appeared frequently in their private talks, but never when humans were present. Words like harvest, processing, and disposal. Meanwhile, Admiral Cho Minho was having his own doubts. The Velithians had requested detailed information about Earth's military capabilities. They wanted to know about every weapon, every defense system, every military base on the planet. "It's for our protection," Ambassador Thexandra had explained. "How can we help defend Earth if we don't know what defenses already exist?" The explanation made sense, but Admiral Cho had spent 40 years in the military. He knew the difference between defensive planning and intelligence gathering. The aliens were asking for information that went far beyond what any ally would need. "They want population counts for every major city," he told his staff during a private meeting. "They want to know about our food production, our power grids, our transportation systems. That's not defense planning. That's invasion planning." His officers were divided. Some agreed with the Admiral's concerns. Others thought he was being paranoid. The aliens had shown no signs of hostility. They continued to share their technology, continued to promise Earth membership in their consortium. Engineer Bai Seonho was working on the technology exchange program. Every day, Velithian scientists shared new discoveries with their human counterparts. Medical scanners that could heal broken bones in minutes, energy systems that could power entire cities without fuel, materials stronger than anything humans had ever created. But Bai noticed something odd. All the technology the aliens shared was incomplete. They would demonstrate how their devices worked, but they never explained the scientific principles behind them. When human scientists asked questions about the underlying physics, the Velithians would smile and say the concepts were too advanced for young minds to grasp. Meanwhile, the aliens were very interested in human technology. They asked detailed questions about human manufacturing processes, computer systems, and weapons design. They seemed particularly fascinated by humanity's nuclear weapons and biological research. "It's like they're giving us toys while studying our real capabilities," Bai told his wife over dinner. "We're showing them everything, but they're only showing us the surface of their technology." When he tried to share his concerns with the project directors, strange things began to happen. His emails would fail to send. His reports would disappear from the computer systems. Phone calls to his superiors would be disconnected at crucial moments. "The system must be glitching," his supervisor told him. "Don't worry about it. Focus on learning what the aliens are teaching us." But Bai knew it wasn't a glitch. Someone was blocking his communications, someone who didn't want his concerns to reach the right people. Dr. Park made a breakthrough in her language studies. She had been working day and night, using advanced computers to analyze patterns in the Velithian speech. Slowly, she began to understand the words they used only among themselves. What she discovered made her blood run cold. The Velithians weren't talking about Earth as a future ally. They were talking about it as a resource to be harvested. They discussed human populations like farmers might discuss livestock. They made plans for processing centers and extraction facilities. In one recorded conversation, she heard Ambassador Thexandra speaking with another Velithian official. "The integration timeline is proceeding perfectly," the ambassador said. "The humans suspect nothing. In another few months, we'll have complete data on their defenses and population centers. And then?" the other alien asked. "Then we implement the cleansing protocol," Thexandra replied. "We'll keep perhaps 10% for labor purposes. The rest are redundant." Dr. Park sat in her office, staring at the translation on her computer screen. Cleansing protocol. 10% for labor. The rest redundant. The words made her feel sick. She tried to call Admiral Cho immediately, but her phone wouldn't connect. She tried sending emails, but they bounced back with error messages. She tried using the emergency communication system, but it was temporarily offline for maintenance. Someone was definitely blocking her attempts to spread the word. She decided to go in person to Admiral Cho's office. But when she arrived at the military headquarters, the guards told her the Admiral was unavailable for civilian consultation. They suggested she schedule an appointment through proper channels. Dr. Park knew she was running out of time. If her translations were correct, the Velithians were planning something terrible. But every official channel seemed to be blocked or monitored. She tried reaching out to other scientists and military personnel, but the same thing happened every time. Phone calls wouldn't connect. Emails disappeared. Meeting requests were denied or ignored. Finally, she managed to make contact with Commander Lee Hoon at the monitoring station. His communications were less closely watched because his station was considered low priority. "Commander, I need to tell you something important," she said when she finally got through. "The aliens aren't what they seem. They're planning to attack Earth." Lee Hoon listened carefully as she explained her discoveries. The translation errors, the blocked communications, the conversations about harvesting and processing. "Dr. Park, those are serious accusations," he said. "Do you have proof?" "I have recordings and translations, but I can't send them through normal channels. Everything is being intercepted." Lee Hoon thought for a moment. "Can you get the information to me physically? Paper documents, storage devices?" "I think so, but I'll have to be careful. I'm being watched." While Dr. Park was trying to expose the truth, the Velithians continued their preparations. They had secretly introduced microscopic devices into Earth's water supply. These nanobots would activate on command, affecting the human nervous system and making resistance impossible. They had mapped every major population center, every military base, every critical piece of infrastructure. Their ships had scanned every defense satellite and weapon system humanity possessed. The humans were so excited about joining the galactic community that they had willingly provided all the information needed for their own destruction. Ambassador Thexandra met with the consortium leadership through secure communications. "The primitive species continues to cooperate fully," she reported. "They're eager to please, just like all the others." "Excellent," came the reply. "Begin Phase 2 of the integration protocol. It's time to test their nanobotic compliance systems." "Understood," Thexandra replied. "The cleansing will begin soon." But unknown to the aliens, a few humans had started to see through their deception. Dr. Park Jisu continued her desperate attempts to warn someone in authority. Admiral Cho Minho began quietly investigating the aliens' true intentions. Engineer Bei Seonho started documenting the technological discrepancies he had noticed. And at the Horizon Watch monitoring station, Commander Lee Hoon began to realize that humanity's first contact with aliens might also be its last. The peaceful visitors had come to Earth with a simple goal: to harvest another species for the Velithian consortium. They had used the same tactics on dozens of worlds before, always with complete success. But they had never encountered a species quite like humanity, a species that had spent its entire history learning how to fight against impossible odds, a species that had developed paranoia and suspicion as survival traits. The Velithians had made one critical error in their planning. They had assumed that a primitive species would be easy to fool and impossible to resist. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Commander Lee Hoon stared at the screens in disbelief. 3 massive ships had appeared at the edge of the solar system without any warning. They were unlike anything humans had ever built. The ships looked like they were made of crystal and light, beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Sir, we're getting readings we've never seen before," said his communications officer. "These ships are huge. Each one is at least 10 kilometers long." Li Hoon had been running the Horizon Watch monitoring station for 5 years. His job was to watch for asteroids, comets, and space junk that might threaten Earth. He had never expected to see alien ships. "Get me a direct line to Earth Command," he ordered, "and keep recording everything." Within hours, the news had spread across Earth. Alien ships had finally arrived. After decades of wondering if humans were alone in the universe, they had their answer. The world leaders called emergency meetings. Scientists dropped everything to study the readings. Regular people gathered around their screens, watching the news with excitement and fear. Captain Kim Nari received the call while she was having breakfast on her diplomatic ship, the New Soul. She was told to prepare for the most important mission in human history. Her ship was chosen because it was the newest and most advanced diplomatic vessel Earth had built. "Ma'am, we're to make first contact," her aide told her. "Earth Command wants our best people on this." Kim Nari had trained for this moment her whole career. She was a skilled diplomat who had solved conflicts between Earth colonies. But this was different. This was contact with beings from another world. The alien ships waited patiently while Earth prepared its response. They made no threatening moves. They didn't try to hide. They simply stayed at the edge of the solar system, clearly visible to Earth's telescopes and sensors. 2 days later, Kim Nari's ship approached the alien fleet. As they got closer, she could see the ships were even more beautiful than the pictures showed. They seemed to bend light around them, creating rainbow patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Incoming message," her communications officer announced. "They're speaking." "English?" A voice filled the bridge. It was smooth and musical, nothing like human speech. "Greetings, humans of Earth. I am Ambassador Thexandra of the Velithian Consortium. We come in peace and friendship." Kim Nari took a deep breath. "This is Captain Kim Nari of the Earth ship New Soul. We welcome you to our solar system." "How wonderful," the alien replied. "We have been watching your species for some time. You have finally reached a level of development that makes you worthy of our attention." The word stung a little. Worthy of attention? But Kim Nari kept her voice calm and professional. "We're honored by your presence. We have many questions." "As do we," Ambassador Thexandra said. "Perhaps we should meet face to face." An hour later, Kim Nari found herself in the alien ship's meeting room. The walls seemed to be made of living light that moved in slow waves. The furniture adjusted itself to fit her human body perfectly. Everything was designed to impress and comfort visitors. Ambassador Thexandra was tall and thin with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. She moved with grace that made Kim Nari feel clumsy in comparison. When she spoke, her voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Your species fascinates us," the ambassador said. "Most civilizations we encounter are peaceful by the time they develop space travel. But humans, you still fight wars, still struggle with basic cooperation. It's quite adorable." Kim Nari tried not to show her annoyance at being called adorable. "We're working on our problems. We've made great progress in recent decades." "Oh yes, we can see that," Thexandra replied. "Your little space stations, your moon colonies, your attempts to reach Mars. Very impressive for such a young species." The meeting continued for several hours. Ambassador Thexandra explained that the Velithian Consortium was made up of over 200 different alien species. They had been exploring the galaxy for thousands of years, bringing peace and prosperity to countless worlds. "We offer membership to species that show promise," she said. "You would gain access to technologies beyond your current understanding. Faster than light travel, unlimited energy, medical advances that could extend human life by centuries." Kim Nari felt her heart racing. This was everything humanity had dreamed of. "What would you want in return?" "Simply friendship and cooperation," Thexandra said with what might have been a smile. "We study each species we encounter, learn about their culture, their technology, their way of life. Knowledge is precious to us." Over the following days, more meetings took place. Scientists from Earth met with alien researchers. Military leaders spoke with Velithian security experts. Trade officials discussed the possibilities of interstellar commerce. The aliens were impressive in every way. They showed holographic displays of their homeworlds, beautiful planets with perfect weather and no wars. They demonstrated technologies that seemed like magic to human eyes. Gravity manipulation, matter conversion, energy shields that could stop any weapon humans had ever built. But there was something in the way they spoke that bothered some humans. They treated Earth's people like children who had just learned to walk. Every human achievement was cute or charming or impressive for such a primitive species. "They're condescending," complained Dr. Park Jisu, one of the language experts working on the translation systems. "They act like we're pets performing tricks," her colleague disagreed. "They're offering us the galaxy. Who cares if they think we're young? We are young compared to them." Most world leaders agreed with that view. Here was the chance for humanity to join a peaceful galactic civilization. No more wars. No more resource shortages. No more wondering if Earth was alone in the universe. The negotiations moved forward quickly. The aliens seemed eager to formalize the relationship. They spoke of establishing permanent bases in the solar system, of beginning immediate technology transfers, of bringing human representatives to meet the consortium leadership. But Commander Lee Hoon, watching from his monitoring station, noticed something odd. The alien ships were conducting detailed scans of Earth's defense satellites, mapping every military installation, cataloging every weapon system humanity possessed. When he mentioned this to his superiors, they told him not to worry. "Of course they're scanning our defenses," they said. "They need to know what they're working with. How else can they help us improve our security?" Kim Nari signed the preliminary agreements 3 weeks after first contact. As she put her name on the documents, she felt she was making history. Humanity was no longer alone. They had found their place in the larger universe. Ambassador Thexandra watched the signing with satisfaction. "This is a momentous day," she announced. "Welcome to the galactic community, humans of Earth." But in the shadows of the crystal ship, other conversations were taking place. Conversations in languages that no human translator had learned yet. Conversations about integration schedules, population assessments, and resource extraction protocols. The Velithian consortium had found another species ready for harvesting.